The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 978, coming to you on Monday, the 13th of July, 2020. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic joint mortgages between unmarried couples. But before getting into that topic, a few preliminary comments. Firstly, and as usual, my condolences go out to all families which have suffered recent bereavements, and in particular, two families. One, the Dalton family of Barley, whose mother, matriarch Mrs. Myrna Dalton, has passed. She is a lady who adopted me and all the children in the village of High Road in the early 1950s. She was then Myrna Kennedy, the daughter of Mr. Kennedy and Eddie. And she was such a kind, attentive, motherly figure. So my condolences go out to all of her children. Her husband predeceased her by several years. And I and the children of my generation growing up in High Road, Barley, owe her a debt of gratitude for the motherly care and attention she lavished on us. Then, sadly, another member of our church, St. Elizabeth Cathedral at Belmont, has passed. This time it's Brother Oliver George, also known as Oliver Williams. But nobody knows him by those names. Everybody knows him as Brother Sparrow. Yes, Sparrow has passed on, of Victoria Village, a faithful brother whom I met when I became a member of the church in about 1994. In the last few years, when he got down in age, he became bedridden and couldn't make it back to St. Elizabeth. But we of St. Elizabeth would like to pass on our condolences to his family. On a more joyful note, I would like to congratulate the leadership and the members of the Awakening Christian Pilgrim Faith of Lomans on a wonderful broadcast service on NBC 705 yesterday morning, repeated last night. The church is led by its patriarch, Bishop Hamil Roban, who would now be in his late 80s or early 90s, one of the real pillars of the spiritual Baptist community. And the service yesterday was well conducted, and I make it my business, once I have the opportunity, to listen to the broadcast services on NBC 705 on Sunday mornings. And I take pride in the fact that I was the Minister of Ecclesiastical Affairs, whom on the 1st of May, 1987, gave the directives to the radio station that they should broadcast services from all churches which were willing to have their services broadcast. Before that, broadcast services were confined to members of the Christian Council. So the broadcast on the radio rotated between the Anglicans, Methodists, Roman Catholics, and the Salvation Army. But after May 1987, all denominations were permitted to have their services carried live on radio on Sunday mornings. So that I listened as usual yesterday morning, and lo and behold, it was the Awakening Christian Pilgrim Faith, a branch of the Spiritual Baptist faith, who were on. And I want to commend them. It was a wonderful service, as I said, for several things. Firstly, the management of time. Now, unfortunately, time management is not something for which Spiritual Baptists are famous. we tend to be a bit lackadaisical where time is concerned. But yesterday's broadcast service was done precisely. Everything was well ordered. The song service was of appropriate length. The prayers, the scripture readings, and the sermon itself was delivered by the son of Bishop Hamill Roban, Pastor Israel Roban. And I want to commend the pastor on a job well done. He brought with vivid clarity the story of Saul, who was later converted to become Paul the Apostle. And he finished preaching, which is unusual for many broadcast services. Usually in these broadcast services, you have the preacher scrambling at the last moment to hustle up the end of a message. But Pastor Roban took his time, and he finished with 10 minutes to spare, so much so that there was room for further rejoicing at the end of the service. I didn't catch the name of the sister who chaired the proceedings, but she did a beautiful job. My congratulations to all of you at Awakening, and I do look forward to attending one of your services one of these good days. Divi. All right. Excuse me. Joint mortgages between unmarried couples. Usually, when persons join together to execute a venture, be it a mortgage or simply acquiring property and so on, as long as there is harmony between them, no problem. But it is when there is some disharmony or some friction in the family that the law has to step in. Increasingly, a number of men and women who have an intimate relationship and are not married are getting together to acquire property and erect a dwelling house, build a home. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, if they are married, then this program doesn't really apply to people who are married. I want in this program to identify some of the problems which can occur where two people who are not married to each other go into a mortgage arrangement, borrow money jointly from a lending institution, and either buy a parcel of land and then build a house on it, or buy a parcel of land with a house on it. So let us say you have a young man and a young woman who, for reasons of their own, have decided not to get married, at least not to get married as yet. They may or may not have children together. But they decided jointly they would approach a lending institution to borrow some money to acquire a property. When they go to the institution, be it a bank or a credit union or an insurance company, would interrogate them as to their earnings, because if you cannot afford to pay back a mortgage, an institution is not going to lend you its money. So the institution would examine the finances of the two persons who present themselves before it seeking a loan. Usually both parties are working, because if only one is working, then the salary of that one may not be adequate to service a mortgage of any consequence. And therefore, usually both are working, and they joined together. The institution will investigate their expenses, their daily expenses, what it costs them to live, to make sure that the two salaries combined would be enough to cover the monthly mortgage repayments. All right. So let us say that all is in order. The institution is satisfied that the salary of the man plus the salary of the woman would be enough to enable them to service the mortgage loan month by month. Nothing is wrong with that. That is quite usual, quite common. As long as they remain on good terms and there is no friction, no botheration between them, they are paying back their mortgage, they either build their home or acquire the home which they have negotiated to acquire, and all is well. What if those two persons quarrel among themselves and decide to split up? That is where difficulties could arise. Occasionally, one party gets annoyed with the other party and moves out of the home, goes on his own or her own. Now, when that happens, the person who has moved out naturally would say, well, look, I'm not going to have my salary go to the bank or to the credit union to pay back a mortgage, and I'm not living there. So that person who has left may make noise and quarrel with the other one and say, look, I want to let us split up. I want my salary released. I want to get compensation for my share of the property. I want to go on my own because we no longer have a viable relationship. That person who has left the relationship and think that it is going to be easy for them to get their salary released from the obligation to pay their part of the monthly mortgage payment would be in for a bit of a disappointment, sometimes a shock. Because when the institution gets word that these two people have decided to split up, or one has decided to pull out of the relationship, the institution says, look, your salary is committed to us. The other person's salary is also committed to us. And we're not going to release unless we are sure that there is an agreement between both of you and that the salary of one person could pay and service the mortgage month by month without problems, which is seldom the case, because if in the beginning you needed two salaries to join together to pay the mortgage, it is hardly going to be possible for the mortgage to be paid out of one salary alone. So that the person who has left the relationship is likely to discover that their salary must remain committed to the institution from which the money has been borrowed until the mortgage is fully paid. And if it is a 20-year mortgage, and say you pull out in year 5, year 6, you have a long time to go before the mortgage can be repaid. So that the person pulling out of the relationship may find himself or herself having to make do with a reduced salary, that is, you get your salary but the mortgage deductions are taken out. You can't do much with what is left because you have ordinary living expenses. You probably just barely manage to make ends meet. And you face a period of years before your salary could ever be freed from the obligation of that mortgage. So that the moral of that is that before persons enter into joint arrangements when they're not married, they really have to understand that they ought to commit themselves to the relationship for a long time, at least for the duration of the mortgage. And most mortgages would be for a minimum of 10 years. In fact, that is on the low side, 15, 20 years. Therefore, if you know you are not going to be willing to stay the course and to remain committed to the relationship, think twice before you decide to go into a joint mortgage arrangement. You may say, okay, I will simply stop paying my part of the mortgage. But how are you going to stop if you have signed a document giving your employer the right to pay your salary right into the bank or to the credit union? And it could only be released from that obligation if the bank or credit union agrees to release it. But they're not going to release your salary if your salary is part of a mortgage repayment arrangement. And they're not going to listen to personal problems, about how so-and-so you can't take, they're running around and they're behaving in a manner that you can't put up with, and so on and so on. The institution is going to say, look, we have the right to have your salary paid directly to us before you take out a cent of it. It comes from your employer directly to us. The other party's salary comes directly to us, and we take out our mortgage installment when the two salaries come in, and the rest is there for you and your partner to use as you see fit. Now, it's no point asking a lawyer if he can go to court with an institution to get your salary released. You might ask the lawyer if he can go to court with your partner and see what is what, but the court is not going to have the power to force the bank or the credit union to make do with one salary and to release the other one before the mortgage is fully paid up. No. Because the obligations owed to the institution from which the money has been borrowed take precedence over the obligations of you and your partner to dwell together and to cooperate. Therefore, once you sign a document giving your employer the right to pay your salary directly into a bank or credit union pursuant to a mortgage arrangement, that arrangement can only end if the employer and the bank agree to end it. And the bank, when I say bank, I mean bank or other lending institution, they are not going to release your portion of the monthly mortgage payments so that they get a reduced mortgage payment guaranteed. And you can't tell them, okay, free up my salary, and when the month is finished, I will come and pay. No, they're not going to say, you're crazy. Once your salary is committed, it remains committed until such time as the institution agrees to release it. Now, there may be circumstances in which the institution finds, okay, we can have the mortgage serviced without the salary of one person because of such and such and such, and in agreement with the other party, they may decide, okay, we can release you from that. But usually that would be accompanied by an arrangement whereby you correspondingly, you're the one who want to leave the arrangement, leave the relationship. It could be arranged that you leave the relationship getting a sum of money to compensate you for your share, and you hand over the whole property to the other party. That can be done, but not so easy. You have to come strong and satisfy the lending institution that its monies are secured. Remember, the lending institution has a primary responsibility to make sure that money is loaned by them to you or to a couple are secured, that they know how to getting back the money month by month. So that in the final analysis, persons who are not married and who are contemplating making joint arrangements to acquire property ought to think very carefully about what they are doing, and they ought not to get themselves into that situation unless they are fully committed to A, to making the relationship work, and B, to playing their full role in the repayment of the mortgage properties. Now, it's a different story if one of the parties to the arrangement loses his or her job. That's a different story, because if you're working, your salary is committed, and you lose the job, then you have no salary going into the bank or the credit union. In which case, the institution, the bank or the credit union may figure, well, look, this mortgage cannot be serviced by one person alone. They may go along for a few months, and they may say, we have to now realize our security. We have to sell the property to get back what is outstanding on the loan. So if a job is lost, or if one party goes away and doesn't look back, that's a different consideration. So my brothers and sisters, look before you leap should be the watchword of those who are thinking about getting into joint arrangements. And above all, make sure that you are mentally and emotionally committed to the relationship. And preferably, if circumstances permit, ultimately, you ought to consider getting married. All right? All right, well, that is all from this program of the Law and You, program number 978. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday TV, for another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Take care of yourself in this COVID atmosphere, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC, and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.